Good day, everybody. I'm your host, Stephen Tingus, for another episode of Ideagen TV Hollywood, where we discuss the current topics around diversity and inclusion. Today, I am beyond excited to have another individual, a groundbreaker in Hollywood on the subject, and that is Nathan Varni. Nathan is the executive director of the ABC network, and I'm proud to present Nathan to our viewers. Nathan,
Hi, Stephen. How are you?
how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
My honor. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Nathan, and sort of your involvement on diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my name's Nathan Varney, as you said. I've been working in the entertainment business probably, since the college time. I had my first internship probably around, 19 or 20 years old, and have been working in a combination. I started working on reality shows and then went to scripted shows, sitcoms, followed by a little stint at Regency Television, and then I've been at ABC for almost it'll be 15 years in
Wow.
November. So I joined something called Current Programming. We have two creative departments. One is development, and they're responsible for creating new shows with various writers. And then we have Current Programming, and that's my team. And we're brought on when a show is greenlit to series. And we, introduce ourselves and act as the liaison between the executive producers of the series and everybody at ABC, at the network. There's so many hundreds of different people that have different jobs at ABC, and it's a lot to navigate for our showrunners. So, in addition to all the creative feedback, we also serve as almost a helper to our writers and producers and directors if they need anything from the network, coordinating meetings with marketing and digital and social media. We also have a department called Broadcast and Standards because we technically are available, for most anyone to acquire the broadcast network feed. So we are regulated by the government a little bit in terms of what we can show, what we can say. So we work with the Broadcast and Standards Department on, helping us not be fined by the government for nudity or inappropriate language or something that's too sexualized or too violent. And sometimes that elicits, a little bit of a conversation between the writers and myself and the Broadcast and Standards people. So it's all just kind of a collaborative day-to-day problem solving, again, a feedback with creative, and sometimes even being a little bit of a therapist, to
Yes.
various writers and producers. Everyone needs someone to vent to, and sometimes that is me. But right now I work with a great bunch of people and lucky enough to be overseeing Grey's Anatomy, which is going into its 18th season starting right now, and Station 19, which is on season 5, and working also on The Conners, which we did a live season premiere to kick off season 4 of that show. So
Yes.
I work with really talented showrunners and writers and producers, directors. In terms of, Disney is very much behind the, diversity inclusion
Right.
impact moving forward. I feel, obviously there is no perfect network or studio,
No.
but I do believe, ABC, to me, we have been talking about this for years and years. Completely agree that chorus progress still needs to be made and change needs to happen. However, it has been something we've talked about in depth with our own talent and development, diversity department, inclusion department, with our creators of our shows, internally with our different departments. We always have an eye on how can we bring the most authentic stories to the ABC television network. And I really think with that with that mandate, we've really been able to bring shows, to light, like The Good Doctor, that features an autistic doctor, and Grey's Anatomy, which has been on for so many years. It's hard to tell at this point, hard to say, what haven't we covered on that show. We've had so many amazing stories, medical cases, guest stars, characters, and we have used, at times we did use last season an actress with MS. And her storyline revolved around MS, and she was found by our showrunner, Krista Burnow. So, when other examples, having also worked on General Hospital for 7 years, I'm no longer working on it, but in my 7-year tenure, we had some amazing stories from underrepresented groups, and including disabled actress who played a lawyer on that show. So where appropriate and where needed, we do talk about, like, okay, we have a role in mind. How do we bring this to screen in the most authentic way? Using people that are afflicted by some of these issues.
Right. Let me just say, not to date myself, I go back to the Dark Shadows and General Hospital era, way before you were born. And I can attest, as a person with, a disability, or, I just call myself a human being with challenges that we all have. But I can attest that ABC has a history of showcasing, in a good word, many different human experiences that need to be told, because the viewership is so large and it's so important. So my hat's off to ABC, in my experience, for 5 decades, walking the walk. Equal representation. So I wanted to ask you, and thank you for the overview of where you were, where you are, and your vision. What would you tell your younger self about how you would envision getting to this point? And would you have changed anything along your path?
I don't think I would change anything. I don't like to have regrets. So, in this business, you learn quickly there are a million ways to go in seeking what ultimately you want to do with your career. I had a great, college experience. I went to Cal State Northridge. We had tons of guest speakers who really, people came in and spoke to us who were agents and managers and network executives and marketing executives. You name it, I think we had it. So it was an eye opener for me to be like, oh, okay, I see. There's tons of different avenues you can go in the entertainment business. That's just not primarily what we know, what we see in front of us, which is, credits on a show. So we know writers, we know directors, we know actors, we know executive producers, but there's just so much to do within this world. You just have to really go to where, you feel that you fit in, and, somewhere that you bring the most passion and skills to the job, hopefully. And of course, there's tons of on-set learning or hands-on learning. If you're in an office, if you start at an agency, I think that's an amazing way to start. You're going to learn, tons of writers. You're going to learn, the who's who in town. So I think that's a great training ground. I didn't go the agency route. I sort of always joke that I went the long way around, starting in production and making my way to a little bit more of the corporate side. But, I think if I could tell my younger self anything, I had the passion, I had the excitement. I knew, what I wanted to do since I was at a young age. So I was very fortunate on that level. But the business is hard. And I think I would tell my younger self, be prepared to have just tons and tons and tons of rejection and doors closed in your face or people not responding. And not to let it, not to let it get you down. You're also going to wind up working with people at some point who probably don't support you. And it's really important to find the group of people that support you for career advancement. We all need help along the way, regardless of who we are, what we look like. And I have been fortunate over the last 21 years to work with some amazing high-level people, high-level producers, executives, and yes, I've had my fair share of those who, we weren't on the same page, but eventually I found the people that supported me and my career path. And I consider myself very fortunate. But you have to be prepared for a lot of rejection, and it's hard. And what I think keeps you going, if you're really meant to be in this business, is your passion for it. If you have a drive, if you can see yourself doing anything else in this world, go try that first. Because I think what keeps people going and motivated in the entertainment business is that drive and that passion to be successful and have a voice at the table, so to speak.
Right. My story is very similar to you, but obviously decades earlier. When I grew up in the 60s as a handicapped youth, I couldn't go out and play games with my friends or go out and play games with my siblings. And so I watched a lot of TV, and obviously at that time, General Hospital, One Life to Live,
Right.
All My Children, Dark Shadows. And in fact, I knew I wanted to do what I'm doing now, and that's helping creatives, ensure authenticity, and character, and storylines. And so, way back when, I have never told anybody this, but way back then, I wrote to Erica Slezak, and I said, Miss Slezak, I would die for the opportunity to portray a character with a disability, because back then they were even talking about her character's mental disability. And so, long story short, I went into science, and then I took science and I implemented it in the policy, for the governor and the president. And then when that was over with, I came back to California, came to LA, and really have worked hard for about 11 years on diversity and inclusion, even before it was labeled diversity and inclusion publicly. So it's like you never know what your life is going to lead you,
Yeah.
but it always leads you right if you have good in your heart and you have the creative spirit.
Absolutely.
So I really commend you, because your road, even as an able-bodied creative, it's not easy. It's not easy for a person like you to earn your way to where you are today. Needless to say, if you have a disability or a physical challenge. So
Yeah.
I'm so honored to have you here.
Oh, thank you. And I agree with that. There's so many disabilities. Some are visible, obviously, some are not. I have a visible disability in my left eye. I'm blind in my left eye. So I've faced, it's for the most part, I think people are relatively kind. But I've had those experiences where, I've sat in interviews, and you can just tell that people are intently staring at like your left eye and
Yeah.
wondering, because you look different, does that impact how you think? And for some of us, yes, but for some of us, no, like myself. So, I have experienced that level of, probably not getting some positions, because of the way someone looks. And so I do understand, and that's part of my drive as well. For these efforts is to be more welcoming and
Yeah.
accepting, and realizing that we all have something to offer, regardless of if we're model perfect looking or not so much, or have some kind of other disability that you might not even be aware because it's not on the outside. So that, there's a lot from my past which has inspired me to march forward with this as well.
Yeah, but they said one thing, every community, and I'm going to be straightforward, every community has their own issues within themselves. And maybe I was just fortunate to have parents and younger siblings that just treated me, as a person.
Right.
But what I did to get through it is educate people. If they, if they, uh, looked at me differently, I just said, "Hey, you know what? I have this challenge, and this is what I face, and it's okay. I'm a champion in my mindset, and I just move forward." But the more you open up to people, whether they're going to hire you or not, the more they're going to respect you
Right.
for being honest. And you never, ever know when that one person that felt awkward or inquisitive about your disability, you never know when they'll come back and say, "Hey, you know what? I really appreciate our conversation. Oh, by the way, would you be interested in this or that?" You just never know because, you know, people with disabilities can be angry and this and that. I just tell them, you're no different than anybody else. You're a human being first,
Right.
right? And that's why your colleagues respect you and recognize your talent to help you get to where you are today.
Absolutely.
And nobody can take that away from you ever.
Very well said. Yes, agree, 100%.
Now, Nathan, were there any specific individuals in your path that gave you a lot of support with regard to your goals? Like, I had family, and I had politicals, and I have uh, executive creatives here in Hollywood. Was there any, like a handful of people that really was your sounding board?
Oh, absolutely. It started at a young age because I became very interested with television and making this my career goal. When I was 13 years old, my dad took me on what we kind of call the Hollywood trip. And that included going, the Universal Studios and some of the studio tours around town, like Warner Brothers, and back in the day, NBC was in Burbank instead of Universal, and had their own studio tour. And part of that trip was a visit to a couple of TV tapings. One was an afternoon, or a daytime talk show, I should say, called Vicky, with Vicki Lawrence.
Right.
And then I saw a sitcom taping later that evening of an ABC show, oddly enough, called Coach, with Craig T. Nelson and Jerry Dyke. So I was immediately taken. I don't know. There's just something about the smell of a soundstage, the excitement, the cameras, a lot of guys and men and women running around, and some were dressed up and some were more casual because they're on the crew. And I was just immediately fascinated by the whole process. I loved it all. I just wanted to learn as much as I could. So what I did in my teenage years and through high school, I used to, record shows on VHS, and then when I played them back, I would pause the credits and get names of producers. And then I would find out, I can't even remember how, but I would call the different studios in Hollywood and track down these producers and get their address and write them letters, similar to what you did, with Erica. I actually wrote to a lot of producers, and
Right.
and I was so lucky because you think, wow, some random teenager is writing a big time television producer, they're never going to respond, you would think. But I was so fortunate. A lot of people did reach out and said, here's my number, or here's my assistant's number. Let us know when you're in Los Angeles, and we'll arrange for you to come. And basically, I just love to sit in the corner and observe and take it all in.
Yeah.
And then I was also fortunate because usually at the end of the day, after observing, the producer would, take 20 or 30 minutes in his or her office and go over any questions I had. So I was really lucky from the age of like 15. I had some amazing select mentors already in place down here on different shows. So, kept in touch with those particular folks, through college, some of them even still today. And then, once I started internships and meeting people through college and networking and all that traditional stuff that they tell you to do, you tend to gravitate towards people where you find a bond. And again, that's why it's so important to work for the right people. And I know we can't always pick and choose, obviously. It's sometimes luck of the draw. But again, very fortunate to have worked for some amazing bosses over the years. In production, I had an amazing mentor. Her name is Susie Greenberg. She's a line producer. She produced Seinfeld. I worked with her on some CBS shows a long time ago in the early 2000s. We did a show with Jason Alexander called Listen Up. And then I worked on the first season of How I Met Your Mother. And she was just amazing. I mean, just someone to just drink in all that she, her level of expertise was amazing. Not only was she a great producer, but I mean, just all aspects of producing down to, I always joke, I got my master's in like craft service because Susie knew how to take care of the studio and network in terms of, always keeping them occupied with food and drink and presentation. I learned so much about presentation, at table reads and what it means to have things nicely, laid out. So I feel like kind of got my master's a little bit from Susie and hospitality, but it was super important because now when as an executive now, sometimes I'll go to shows and I know within, the first 20 minutes of just looking around, seeing how things are organized, like, if you've got a really amazing production team, and Susie taught me so much. And then in terms of the executive world, I've learned and worked for many executives, but I think probably my biggest mentor at ABC was Vicki Dummer. She was the head of current programming. She had been at the network actually for 24 years, but she was the head of current programming since about 2011 to 2020. Now she has moved on to Warner Brothers Television and is overseeing their current department. But she was really amazing because she was someone who believed in me and knew I had an amazing work ethic, knew I was such a hard worker and so passionate about moving ahead and making something of myself. And she supported me every step of the way. So I was incredibly fortunate to work for her for almost 10 years. And in this business, unfortunately, things don't ever stay the same forever. Yeah. So I knew this, and I'm like, you know what? This is you're in a good moment, and it ended up being 10 amazing years. But I never wished away my work day. I never said, oh, God, I can't wait until it's Saturday. I mean, of course, we all get tired, but I just appreciate every day because I knew one day I would move on, she would move on, somebody would get laid off. So you've come to expect the unexpected, in the television and film business. So I'm really happy I took that approach because I feel like I really enjoyed every day with her, and I learned so much. And again, she was instrumental in really, opening that door to becoming an executive.
I think you're a very, very humble, creative, and to our viewers, don't ever undervalue the pieces that you have to put together for a production. Don't forget about the hospitality. Don't forget about the environment
Right.
in which they have a table read. A table read isn't just a read, it's an emotional investment
Right.
episode that you have to deliver on the mark. And don't forget about all the stage hands and the production team, because whether you're a star or whether you're behind the camera, it all has to fit together the right way. And I think people, whether you're able bodied or disabled, think they're going to come to Hollywood and be a star. And that's the only job in Hollywood. No, people like me and Nathan, Nathan's a senior executive. We all work our butts off to do the best thing to make the next day and the next season even better. And I think, what your comments about your experience, behind the camera, because essentially you're executive behind the camera, you built your career behind the camera, but it takes a lot of work and a lot of devotion. And whether you make $1 million or you make 180, SAG minimum, it doesn't matter. It's the product that you produced.
Absolutely. And I gotta say, I feel one of the things I'm glad I did actually was production work, because it has given me a deeper understanding and appreciation for how a show is actually put together.
Yeah.
I never snap my fingers and say, where is it? Because I do understand it takes an army of people and dedicated people to pull off these shows, and incredibly long hours. So I think being on both sides has given me a unique perspective, because I've noticed, at least in my experience at ABC, not that many executives have on-set experience or post-production experience. And I think it's invaluable, because not only do you understand the process,
Yes.
you can be more empathetic and sympathetic to what is possible. For example, what's possible in editorial, what's possible in post, and you understand why we can't just shoot something today and have it all finalized tomorrow. Like it's a long process. So having that deeper understanding of production days and hours and just how hard people work, I'm always appreciative of everyone's hard work. I'm enamored still by people that actually do the job, because the network and studio, yes, we work hard and we're very busy, and it is a challenging job at times. However, it's more challenging doing the work and being on set and writing the scripts and directing the episodes and being a camera guy, being a grip, working in post, hair and makeup. I mean, you name it. Those people are working 10 times harder than even myself, and I really value them. And it always makes me realize that when I'm on set. Having just done the Connors live show, we were rehearsing for about 7 or 8 days before we shot live. And it is an enormous undertaking. And I have such a deep, deep respect for everyone involved, obviously the actors too, but everyone involved behind that camera is really, like you said, working their butt off.
And boy, that show is doing really good now, despite, a couple of years ago. But, the ABC shows, I honestly miss How to Get Away with Murder. One of my good friends, as you know, is Viola Davis, and she and Norman Lear and your colleague Jay uh, at Disney Animation. Uh, he's in charge of current series and diversity. Uh, they're my rocks, and they understand what people like me are going through. But when you're creative, they really rely on you to educate them before you know things happen
Yeah.
intentionally. So it's a small community,
Right.
really.
It
Uh,
really is. It really is. You're very, very, very true with that.
Now, I wanted to ask you, what three projects in your current position that you've worked on that you felt in your heart sent a great message?
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing that comes to mind, when I joined General Hospital, I really wanted to tell stories. I mean, they do an amazing job, obviously, on their own. But when I joined, I wanted to branch out and tell relevant stories for seniors, senior citizens or people over a certain age, in addition to our younger, attractive cast. And I mean, like they get plenty of screen time, but what I noticed when I started on General Hospital was a lot of the veteran actors, if you will, were still on the show, but it seemed like they were stuck, kind of in these supporting roles. And, they had children, or they had adult children, or they had grandchildren. And whenever someone had a problem, they would come and talk to these veteran, characters. And they became, I think it's great to have a variety. So I don't mind people being sounding boards, because that's part of life. We all have those people that we turn to when we need advice or need to vent or whatever. But I wanted to put people front and center. So we partnered with this great organization that's an offshoot of PBS called Next Avenue. And we partnered up to do a really long but emotionally fulfilling and at times heartbreaking story about one of the main characters, Sonny Corinthos. His father, Mike, goes through a struggle and with Alzheimer's.
Yes.
So I gotta say, the actor who played Sonny's dad, Mike, was amazing, and it was just it just was a great grounded story, because soap operas tend to be a little over the top at times, a lot of dead people coming back and silly moments. But this, we were just so happy with how it turned out, because it just felt real and grounded and super emotional. So that's always been very important to me, of showcasing real stories for all ages. So I'm very happy we got to accomplish that in my time at that show. I mean, Grey's Anatomy, every week they wow me, because they're forward thinking. They're not thinking, oh, okay, we only do stories for these types of people, or this segment. They do stories, it feels like, between Station 19 and Grey's Anatomy, do stories for everybody. This upcoming season, we're going to be approaching, one of the characters on the show is noticing that there's an algorithm for people of color that's way different than white people when they're treated medically. And why is that? So we're attacking that subject matter this year. In previous seasons, as you know, I mean, we've done, my goodness, LGBTQT stories and transgender stories, military veteran stories. We're doing a little bit of that this season as well, coming down the line, which is really impactful. And then, of course, when you have medical stories of the week, you can do tons with that. Like I said earlier, we had an actress who has MS, and we used her for an MS storyline last year on Grey's Anatomy, which was really impactful. And also, we did some true to life stories, like having the shows based in Seattle. We started approaching, kind of the reform of police on Station 19, and what can the firefighters be doing to help the police, or is it trained firefighters that can be called out for dealing with different scenarios that aren't just murder and being robbed, and there's a lot to do with mental health as well, and you've got to train people. A lot of people, at least on the police force, are not especially trained in how to deal with different types of people suffering from all kinds of different afflictions. So we attacked that head on last year, and then of course on those shows as well. Actually, Connor's, Grey's Anatomy, and Station 19 all addressed COVID last year and the pandemic and how it impacted a blue collar family in Illinois on Connor's, and how it impacted firefighters on Station 19 dealing with the public, and of course, most importantly, how that pandemic really was just devastating to the medical community. And we explored a lot of those episodes last year on Grey's. So I'm really proud of Grey's and Station 19. I mean, every week again is really, they tell amazing stories. There's a adopted child on Station 19 of Ben and Bailey's, who was once homeless. So we jump into the homeless stories this year as well, and what they're facing. Those are just a few examples of shows that I've personally been involved with. But again, all of our shows, for the most part, really attack different issues, and I think, on a whole, we're very proud of the work that we've been doing over the last 5 or 10 years.
It sure sounds like you're stuck in a candy store with a lot of different types of, yummies at your fingertips, that you can go, from one series to another and just think outside the box and help, the writing staff make some really good shows that need to talk about issues that need to be talked about.
Absolutely.
Without filter. Obviously, with standards, you have, a degree of, things to deal with, but if done properly, it can really, the purposes of TV and movies is really to make people question themselves, their surroundings, and give them avenues of thought to make their environment better. Don't you agree?
Absolutely. Yes, 100%. Spot on.
So it's amazing to be in your shoes. It's a lot of hard work, but it's the creativity.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, and I gotta say, there is no one person who does it alone. It feels the best when everyone is behind it, when your writers are coming up with these amazing stories that they're excited to tell and bring to the screen, that are supported by the network and studio. So it's not just one side saying, we got to have more of these stories. It's this really great collaborative effort, to put our best foot forward and bring these stories to light in, again, an organic, genuine way. And sometimes, those stories are not easy, but you have to address them head on, and you have to address them honestly and openly, even if that makes, some people uncomfortable. It is a good thing. And I think we need more of it.
Right. Thank you for sharing that with our audience. Now, Nathan, I'm going to turn to a little bit about disability.
Sure.
And, ever since Oscars So White, and recently Emmys So White, it's like every year we have a different hashtag, but just so our viewers understand, 25% of our population is consistent of people with disabilities. 2.5% of the roles on TV are characters with a disability. But 95%, even after 5 years of us talking about diversity inclusion, 95% of the characters in the of the actors, sorry, in those roles are able-bodied. Nathan, where we were and where we are today, what is your hope or your idea of how to change things a little bit more, a little better for everybody? Because people don't realize that TV and film is a business. People, please understand that entertainment is a business. It's not a social experiment. It's a business. And everybody, most everybody, especially Nathan, understands that representation matters. So, Nathan, what are your hopes for the industry going forward?
My biggest hope is that we just have more of an open-mindedness and do things differently. One of the struggles is, you mentioned it a few moments ago when you're talking about talking in general. You can talk about some of these issues ad nauseum. You can, and I think maybe that was part of the industry's problem, is there were a lot of people talking about these issues prior to, a year and a half ago. But again, you can only talk so much before you need to put your words into action. So
Yes.
the open-mindedness to be more accepting and think out of the box and go outside the norm, like that's important. And again, one person can't do it. Like you need everyone's buy-in. You need your showrunners, you need people pitching shows to studios and networks. You need your studio network executives to be, to buy in and say, you know what, we do want to move ahead with the show because we think it's important because X, Y, and Z, or whatever the reason is, or whatever the demographic or what story you're trying to bring to life, and that it's unique and different. You need to embrace that. I think what has happened is, and a little bit of this obviously is because of, the business side and the ratings, is networks, for the most part, I think have liked and or loved to stick to what feels comfortable and what has worked in the past. But television today is different than the days that there were, 3 or 4
Yeah.
broadcast networks, and that's about it. And, so I think there's been great strides made, but again, is it enough? Not quite yet. So I think that's what we have to do, is we have to not only talk about it and brainstorm and keep the conversation alive, because that's very important as well. But now we need to put our words and again, put them into action and develop some of these shows. Off the top of my mind, I think we should be developing more shows. Like we did a show called Speechless for 3
Yes.
seasons on ABC.
Yes.
Where's kind of the replacement for that, and what's the new take? Obviously you wouldn't want to do an exact carbon copy of
Right.
Speechless, but what is the new idea that writers might have that could be, a series that potentially could last, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 seasons. That's the place where we need to get in. And then, how do we get people to tune in and embrace these stories as well? That's the second part. And again, that takes a collaboration. That's between, promotions and marketing and all that stuff, and getting the word out, and letting the world know that we, and we meaning like Hollywood, find that these stories are incredibly important, and to give a voice, to give a reason why these stories and why these actors and characters of, again, all backgrounds and all different afflictions need to be more populated on the screen, so that hopefully you can continue, to educate people. And, ideally one day in a perfect world, there would be shows for everybody, and not just niche shows, not just like, oh, we can only do that on, so-and-so network because it's fine if they only get 300,000 viewers. Like, it has to become the new normal where everyone embraces this. So the creative community embraces it, but then our audiences embrace it as well.
Right. I agree. You know, and one thing I want to commend you about, and because I was in charge of disability for our country for a former president, is that you brought up aging and issues surrounding aging. And I was the first government official to, you know, talk about aging into disability, which we all encounter.
Right.
And your emphasis on disability, you know, speechless was great and all, and some of the cast are good friends and appreciate what I'm doing, but to have a show, I would rather see a drama or a dramedy about a person with a disability, whether married or in a relationship that is part of the community,
Right.
community based drama or dramedy, that would make us, for better words, and I know I might get some daggers at me, but to make us more normalized
Right.
that we are a significant part of the population. When we go out, we see each other, we see ourselves, you know, and that's what we have to hope to see on TV.
Right. Absolutely. We're all just humans, and what attracts me to television is human stories. And
Right.
it doesn't matter where those stories come from. I mean,
Yeah,
there's always something in a deeply human story. I can always find something incredibly relatable, and
yeah,
that's what sucks me into some of my favorite shows.
yeah. So I don't know how you're gonna approach this, but you know, without spilling the beans and naming, you know, pilots to be, I know I was involved in one of the pilots or associated with one of the pilots that didn't get a mid-season pickup. But are there any pilots without naming the names? What is sort of the theme for prime time at ABC for the fall?
For the fall, I think, I mean, this year in general, we have some shows launching in the fall, but lately we've also been launching a lot of shows at mid-season.
Yes,
Try to get away from the clutter of everybody launching shows in September and October.
yes,
So we have one new drama launching in October called Queens, from Zahir McGee, who used to work with Shonda Rhimes on Scandal, incredibly gifted writer, about women of a certain age getting the band back together, so to speak. It's a fun show, but it's also a poignant show. It just has so many layers to it, and I think, again, talking about a show that has something for everybody. There's a lot of emotion, but there's a lot of fun soap in it. So I think we're looking forward to launching that in October. On the comedy side, we're holding back one of my personal favorites. It's called Abbott Elementary. It explores a public school on the East Coast, and it doesn't really focus on the children. They are there, of course, because it's a school, but it focuses on the teachers at the school, and they all come from really unique, fascinating, inclusive backgrounds. And it's interesting to put them all together because at heart, they are very different characters, but the one thing that they share is the love of their students and giving the students the best start they can in this public school. It has a lot of heart, as many of our ABC comedies do, but it's also funny, and shot a little bit in the style of like The Office. So I'm really excited about that. I think that should be, either winter, probably winter of 2022.
Uh-huh.
And then as far as, the development folks, I'm not too privy to what is being pitched right now, but I do know that they are busy hearing new pitches for not this season, but the 22-23 season, which would launch next year around this time.
Right.
So it'll be exciting to see, what kind of the mandates are. But in addition to the mandates, I've always asked development, how do you guys know what you're looking for? And they said, sometimes we're looking for, a specific take on something, but a lot of times they said, you don't know what you can get excited about sometimes until it comes through the door and
Right.
the writer pitches it, and that might be the next big thing. So so what the work that they're doing is really exciting, because I think they're trying to really throw everything about broadcast TV over the years, and try to develop in a fresh, unique perspective, being incredibly much more inclusive, and showcasing stories about, if it's a family show, like what makes this family unique, so it doesn't just feel like another cookie cutter version of 25 other shows that we've done over the years. So
Right.
I'm feeling really optimistic this year, and really excited to see how viewers respond to these shows.
Do you have any crosstalk, Nathan, with development in case there's something that you might like that isn't forwarded to you?
Sometimes, we are pretty separate departments, but we do communicate, especially in terms of, since we work with many writing staffs. Development always wants to know, like, who are the new up and coming, writers on the staff. So we do talk about that. We talk every couple months about directors in general, and which episodic directors might be great, to hire to shoot a pilot in
Right.
winter and spring. So we communicate a lot in terms of that. Every once in a while, look, I mean, a good idea is a good idea. So if, I for one, and I think I echo how our network works, if somebody has an amazing idea for a show, and even better knows a writer who might be able to pull it off, development always is open, to that suggestion, and making either a informal meet and greet or an introduction.
Right.
It all kind of starts there, and then hopefully development will feel just as excited as the person who had that idea, and you never know, they might get that opportunity to make a pilot.
Yeah. I've been through the process, and it's, even though the people at a particular production company say, get used to 99% of the time being rejected, and 1% of the time having a diamond in the rough. And as long as you understand that, then you're going to be okay in the business.
Right.
But if you don't understand that, you really don't know the mechanics and the business of the business. So you can't take it personally, because
Absolutely, yeah. Having thick skin is important in this business for the a large amount of rejection that we all receive. And then secondly, what's important is keep going. Like, if you get a rejection, don't feel like your one and only idea is now gone forever. Like, if you're a writer, write every day or every week and have a million ideas, because if one of your ideas doesn't make it through, then come back, lick your wounds for a few days, but then come back stronger and come back with the next big idea. And if you just keep hitting people with idea after idea after idea, and they know that you're passionate, and I mean, we're always looking for people with just tons of ideas, because what I always say, what you don't really want to have is network and studio dictating what a good idea is. Like, we want to hear it from actual talent out there, in terms of the writers. So so don't get disparaged if you get that rejection. Keep pushing through, and If you have one closed door, just keep pounding on that door until
Yeah.
you. So
I can't tell you how many people, really good writers, send me scripts to pitch to, like, Viola Davis and her husband Julius Tennant, Charles King at Macro, and they respect the subject matter that I present to them, whether it be disability or whether it be a racial social issue that needs to be told. So I'm very fortunate to have earned that respect, that if I bring a project forward, it has a message that needs to be told. Whether it's picked up is one thing, but that's okay, because you have to learn, you have to earn your respect in this business, and that's far more important than money could ever be.
absolutely, very much agree, Stephen.
So, Nathan, I wanted to correct myself. I want you to reach out to John Jay Francis.
Yeah.
He's the head of series and diversity at Disney Animation.
Yeah, I've yet to meet him. I will meet him one day. We're on the same LinkedIn pages, and he seems like an amazing human being as well, and all the work he's doing is inspiring.
He's a great guy at your compound in Burbank, and he was on my show. He would be a good person for you to meet and talk about what we're all trying to do here in Hollywood. But Nathan,
Yeah.
I thank you
Thank you, Stephen.
for being on our show. I would have to say this was the most in-depth, honest discussion about where we are, where we need to go that I've had to date. And I truly appreciate your work in the industry and the way that you move forward with a lot of stuff to implement.
Absolutely. I feel the same way, and I applaud you for all the work that you're doing as well. And I absolutely was so honored to be invited to speak with you on the show. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm honored. So thank you, Nathan, and have a great afternoon.
Thanks. You too, Stephen. Pleasure.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.